Vice President Kamala Harris has faced a slew of critics since she was put on the ticket. A lot of folks, since she's been in the White House, have been saying she is a drag on President Joe Biden. Look at polling numbers say that as well. Others say she is being completely judged incorrectly. Well, Jennifer Rubin, columnist with the Washington Post, published this article a couple of days ago that says that Vice President Kamala Harris is indeed an asset, that she is an underrated asset to this administration and to Democrats. I caught up with her earlier today. Here's our conversation. Jennifer, glad to have you on the show. I saw your piece, Kamala Harris is an underrated asset. And here's what's interesting. We have seen 3 years of a steady stream of stories. Oh, my God, she's horrible. She has no idea what she's doing. And when the narrative is framed that way, it has an impact then on polling numbers. And I think this is a perfect example of a lot of people who have no clue really what the hell the vice president does.
That's absolutely right. You know, first of all, vice presidents generally are not that well regarded, and most of them are frankly atrocious. Do we remember Dan Quayle, spell potato with an E? Do we remember Dan Quayle and his other fellow Republican vice presidents like Mike Pence, who used to stare adoringly up at his boss and come up with one ridiculous compliment after another? Do we remember wooden Al Gore? You know, most vice presidents don't have a great reputation, and in part because it's kind of a made-up job. They don't have a constitutional role other than presiding over the Senate, which Kamala Harris has done many times because it's so divided. But basically, they're there as an insurance policy. Now, unlike some presidents, President Biden has given her substantive things to do, and she's done them. She's traveled all over the world. Most people are not familiar with the fact that she has conducted international diplomacy on behalf of the administration. And moreover, on issues that really hit home for many, many Americans, and I think are going to determine the outcome of the election, like voting rights, like abortion, like now IVF, like climate change, guns. She has been out there doing battle, and she's doing college campuses. Many of them are HBCUs, so she is reaching communities of color. She's really carrying her own weight and more. So this notion that she's somehow a drag on the ticket or she's not ready for prime time, I don't know where it comes from. And, you know, when people write these columns or they make these little spiels on cable TV, they rarely talk specifics. And that's because they're not going to find anything specifically that she's done wrong. And in fact, she's done a lot right.
Well, I think part of this is also, again, when you go back to framing. So I've seen journalists, folks, white mainstream journalists. I've seen folks in black media go, "Oh, where's she been?" And I'm going, do you not know how to use Google? If you look at her Instagram feed, her Twitter feed, you will see the speeches given. You will see the travel. You will see what she's involved in. But one of the things that she's even talked about that people just somehow act like it didn't exist, really for the first year to a year and a half of the Biden presidency, we were still in COVID. And so there were limitations in terms of moving her and the president around. So to act like that didn't exist is nonsensical, where she was sort of locked in. And to your point, because Democrats were locked in a tie, she needed to stay close to D.C. where they needed her to vote. And she's now has broken the record of the most top-breaking votes. And so this notion that, oh, we were going to see her all around the country was always crazy.
You know, it's a really, really good point. And you're right. Why do they make that complaint about her and not about the president or other people? You know, we haven't talked about it directly, but obviously some of this is because she is a trailblazer. She's the first woman of color. She's the first woman to be in that role. And I think there is almost a sense of entitlement among a lot of people in the mainstream media that therefore they can, judge her harshly. They can apply a different standard to her than they would to anyone else. I didn't hear all of these people complaining when Mike Pence was vice president. I didn't hear these people complaining when Joe Biden was vice president. And she's been as integral a part of this administration as those people were in their own administrations. So you're right. It's this double and triple standard. And this notion, by the way, that the president could simply dump her from the ticket and everything would be okay is mind-bogglingly stupid. Can you imagine the uproar? Rightly so. If he dumped the first woman of color as vice president off his ticket, and for what? To get what? We already know people essentially don't really vote for the vice president. So he's going to piss off millions of people, including women and people of color whose votes he desperately needs. For what? To get some milk toasty person who then they're going to shred for being, too quiet or too loud, too deferential, not deferential enough. The entire conversation strikes me as a bunch of bored people who are too lazy to get out and listen to her. And one of the things I did in the piece that you were so generous to recognize is actually look at what she's been saying. She's incredibly effective, incredibly articulate in ways no one else in this administration has been. When the special counsel's report came out that was essentially a political smear on the president, she gave the single most effective rebuttal, talking about what Biden does on a daily basis. She says, I've been with him. He's asking questions. He's directing our national security apparatus. He was involved in the days directly after October 7th, the war in Gaza. She gave a very vivid picture. And why was she able to do that? Because she's there. She's in the room. She is part of the team. So I think people, have this mindset, this framing, as you put it, and don't bother me with the facts. They're going to stick to it come hell or high water.
Also, I think it's important for us to also look back when she ran for president. There was no other candidate who was attacked as vehemently by Russian bots. When you look at the data is there. She far and away. Now, when I see that, the first thing that jumps out at me is, oh, she's an absolute threat. You got that going on. Second of all, you've got people who are in this administration who want to run for president. So she is a threat to them. People need to understand, and people not just look at 2024. They're looking at if Biden-Harris gets reelected in 2024, then she's the front runner in 2028. There are 8 to 10 to 12 to 15 people who really want to be president. And so they don't want to see her in that critical position. And so I think it's nonsensical to not recognize there are multiple factors at play in this whole game of how do we take Vice President Kamala Harris out.
Wow, that is such a good point. And, when you think about it, the critics, the Whisper campaign is doing exactly what Russian bots were doing. They're hand in hand because, of course, the Russians, first of all, want to foment racial unrest, racial conflict in the United States. Secondly, they don't want President Biden to win. They want the patsy who has invited Putin to attack Europe in power. So what are people doing who are engaged in this sniping and whispering campaign? They're doing the Kremlin's work for them. That's all this is. And it's mind-bogglingly counterproductive, coming especially from people who say they want the president to win. Well, this is not the way to get the president elected, dumping on his judgment and dumping on his vice president.
And you alluded to this earlier. And again, for those of us who actually pay attention to these things, if you look at how President Biden has positioned Vice President Kamala Harris, there is no vice president in my lifetime. And then if I even go before, I was born November 14, 1968, you go before that, there has been no vice president that the president has positioned in a forward place. What I mean by that is, you look at many of the major speeches, the major events that have happened. typically President Biden will have her speak first, then he speaks. I don't recall President Obama doing that for Biden. I don't recall Bush doing it for Cheney. I don't recall Clinton doing it for Gore. We could go on and on and on. And so this idea that, oh, she's been a part of a disappearing act, it's like what the hell are y'all talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's she who is going out on the college tour. It's she who is packing auditoriums and getting incredibly enthusiastic crowds. So the notion that the president thinks she's some kind of deficit or is hurting the ticket, no, he has figured out she is one of the critical parts of getting elected. She has got to get young people, she's got to get women, got to get people of color, got to get people who care about the same issues that she articulates so well. There is no one in the administration who's stronger on abortion and on women's rights than she. The president, frankly, doesn't like to talk about abortion all that much. He's a good Catholic, and it makes him, I think, a little nervous, quite frankly. She has no qualms, and she talks about it in exactly the right way. She says, this is about freedom. And boy, is she right. And as we learned this week with the IVF decision in Alabama, it's about the freedom to decide when you're going to have kids, if you're going to have kids, how you're going to have kids. And she, like a righteous prosecutor, is making that case more effectively than anybody else in the administration.
A couple of more questions. Let's go back a bit, and you might remember this very well. Again, a lot of people, this notion, even dealing with Israel and Hamas in Gaza, wanting Vice President Harris to come out forcefully. And I kept saying, folks, she serves at the pleasure of the president. She cannot do that. I participated in conversations with Sunday morning hosts with Vice President Biden. And there were things that he was pushing President Obama on that Obama wasn't there yet. The role of a vice president is to provide private counsel to represent the interests of the president. Now, we know when Vice President Biden, when he went on Meet the Press and staked out his position on gay marriage, we know Obama was not happy that he got pushed on that, but Biden made a calculated risk. And so I think people need to understand a vice president, they are not looked upon well if they are out here freelancing and doing whatever they want to, and they frankly are opposed to the position of the president.
Exactly. I mean, this is crazy stuff. Did people expect that Dick Cheney was going to come out and criticize President Bush on gay marriage, for example, when he was supportive of it because of one of his daughters and President Bush was catering to the right wing? No, he just shut up about it. So that is the job of the vice president. You don't go around bad-mouthing your boss or creating conflict. And by the way, that doesn't even achieve the aims, because then our allies don't know which one to believe, which one to listen to. She is effective because she carries his message and articulates it in a way that is extremely effective. That's what she was doing, for example, in Munich, when she delivered a very strong speech, really laying into Trump and Putin for seeking to disrupt NATO. That's what she does, is take the president's message, formulate in a way that she's comfortable with and that reaches audiences he cannot. That is her highest use, and that's what she's doing right now.
Last question here, and I think this is really important. And we also had to factor some things in. There were some missteps. There were some mistakes. It is different when you go from being district attorney to Attorney General California to United States Senator to being vice president. You're in a bubble that is unlike any other. And so they're learning, there's a learning curve there. But I think what we were seeing in your article, your piece really lays it out. We're seeing her, frankly, move into, in music, there's a phrase called stay in the pocket. And so she's sort of in that space right now. You can tell, and we live stream all of her stuff on the Black Star Network. You can tell when she's now speaking, she is far more confident. Yeah. She is far more aggressive. And I think, to use a phrase earlier, I think we're absolutely going to see her take on that prosecutorial role over the next 7 to 8 months. And that is going to be the Vice President Kamala Harris that we see. And it's going to remind people when she was grilling Republican nominees when she was in the United States Senate.
Absolutely. And the phrase that I use is that she has sharpened the message. She's not saying anything differently than she did before. She is just razor sharp, and she delivers it with power, without any hesitation now. And it is a matter of coming into her own. You know, she wasn't in the U.S. Senate for that long, frankly, before she was chosen for vice president. And there, her best moments, again, were prosecuting the case, usually grilling the Supreme Court nominees, who she was exactly right about and what their ultimate goal was once they got on the court. So I think she has grown into the role, and I think we're seeing more of who she is, and I think we're seeing exactly why the president chose her as vice president. She has skills, ability, and identity that he doesn't, and he needs.
Folks, check out the piece, Kamala Harris is an Underrated Asset, by Jennifer Rubin in the Washington Post. Jennifer, we appreciate you joining us on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, Mignon, Michael, and Matt, let's get into it. Mignon, your thoughts on what Jennifer Rubin laid out by saying that Vice President Kamala Harris is an asset and not a drag on this ticket?
I would agree. Vice President Harris is definitely an asset to this ticket. She has a wide appeal to a broad audience. But the thing that I was thinking about when you were having a discussion was that she's very adept at taking this sort of civil rights framing, this type of messaging that comes from her heritage, right? Her parents were civil rights activists, and making it wide enough and non-threatening and applicable to a very broad audience and in a very quiet and yet powerful way. So, yeah, she's dangerous. She's very dangerous for that reason. And I think, of course, we would automatically criticize her. You know, Vice President Harris can't blink without being criticized, right? She's a woman of color. She's of African American descent. She's got power, and she defers to no one really, but she still plays the party line in a way that allows her to come into her own and to actually show the world what her role is in this administration. So I agree, she's underrated. I think that we've only begun to see the power that she has and the type of influence that she has within the American public, and I'm looking forward to more in the future.
Michael, I think the way we have to look at this is to understand, and I think a lot of people don't really get how these things work. When we talk about American public opinion, well, who shapes American public opinion? Media. For anybody to say that when you look at for a large number of people, oh, no, I just made my own independent decision. No. When you have the right attacking her viciously and constantly, when you have folks on the left who, oh, this person could be better. I mean, I remember when Senator Elizabeth Warren was interviewed, and when she was asked the question about the Biden-Harris ticket, and then when it came to whether Harris should be on the ticket, she deferred and said, well, that's up to the president. And she got blasted and tried to reach out to the vice president's office, and the vice president wouldn't take her phone calls. And it was a couple of weeks before she would actually even talk to her. And Warren was apologetic when it's like, you created this problem. You could have easily answered the question. And so she's had attacks from folks on her side.
Yeah. She's had attacks from her side. You know, so there's so many things here. I made a list of some recent things that Vice President Kamala Harris has done. First of all, most people don't pay attention to what the vice president does. All those people who criticize her and say she hasn't said anything, she needs to speak up more, from people in the comment section here to Charlamagne the God on the Breakfast Club. I would encourage them to follow VP on Instagram. If you did something as simple as that, Okay, you can see what she's done. You can see the HBCU tour that she went on to numerous HBCUs to talk about politics. You can see the reproductive freedom tour that she went on. You can read about the statement that she put out, the Jacksonville, Florida shooting in 2023 near HBCU. You can look at when she went down to Florida to denounce the new social studies standards from Florida that talked about how some slaves benefited from skills that they learned during slavery, okay? And she was vehement in her condemnation of that. We can look at other things. She presides over the first White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, okay? President Biden gave her the task of trying to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act pushed through. Now, you had obstinate Republicans. When it went to the Senate, no Republicans in the Senate voted for the bill. Okay, we can criticize Manchin and Sinema all we want to. At least they voted for that bill. Okay, so there's numerous things that she's done. She's eminently qualified, and you have so many people that fear her. They put these hit pieces out on her. You talked about this before some months ago, last year, different hit pieces in the Washington Post, things like this that had no foundation. And then on MSNBC, they spent 15 minutes on bullshit, attacking Vice President Kamala Harris. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with, and this is what happens when you know you're feared. Okay, because they wouldn't do Dan Quayle like this. They didn't do hit pieces like this on really Vice President Mike Pence. So when you know the opposition fears you, they put stuff out like this.
Matt, this is the Twitter feed here. And again, this is what kills me when I hear people say, well, we ain't seen Vice President Harris. We don't know what she doing. You can go here. Here she's on the road talking about Roe v. Wade. Here she is talking today to the National Governors Association with President Biden. Here she is in Grand Rapids, Iowa, right there. Here she is having a discussion about reproductive freedom in Michigan. She's commenting about what's happening in Alabama. She's sitting here again. Here's the Fight for Reproductive Freedom tour in Grand Rapids. Then her Black History comment. Then talking about student loan debt cancellation. This is when she was in Pittsburgh this week, where they had where she gave a speech there talking about the $6 billion going towards infrastructure. Here she is talking about clean water, announcing that $5.8 billion still in Pittsburgh. Excuse me. Here she is. Here literally are photos that are a combination of her week, what took place just in 1 week, talking to the troops and all of that. This is her in Munich, Germany. This is her at the Munich Security Conference right here, where she gave a strong speech there. We carried that speech live on Roland Martin, on the Black Star Network. This is her meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine. This is her speaking there. And man, I can literally just sit here and keep scrolling. This is her talking to the president of Ukraine. So when I hear people say stupid stuff like, we don't know, we ain't seen her, we don't know, like, well, what's she doing? Hello, this is, the proof is right there, what she's doing.
Yeah, people are going to overlook that proof when they want to attack her, notwithstanding that proof. And I think one of the things that was really important in your conversation with Ms. Rubin is the fact that constitutionally, the vice president doesn't have a specific sphere of influence, right? They're not specific policy things that she is constitutionally given to handle. So I think not only should she be judged based on the content of what she's doing, her actual actions, but the fact that this is a role that can be as expansively handled or as contractually handled, if you can call it that, as the vice president and the presidential administration think is appropriate. And this is proof positive that the
Matt, let's go to the 60s. Matt, let's go to the 60s. Vice President Lyndon Baines Johnson was one of the strongest legislators ever. He becomes vice president, and John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy wouldn't give that man time of day. He was the Senate majority leader. He was sitting here doing all sort of stuff. They were like, yeah, we'll need you, Lyndon. And we saw what happened when Kennedy gets assassinated and LBJ becomes president, and how he was able to get those civil rights bills through. So for people to sit here and think that oh, well, she is just going to just get in there and do whatever the hell she wants. No, you simply can't do that. You have to abide by what's the position of the president, and I have to fall in line. And people, I don't know why people act like that's not real. That's real. You have to fall in line with the direction of the president. And somebody also, somebody in the chat went, she doesn't serve the pleasure of the president. Newsflash, everybody's watching. Yes, she does. The president can replace anybody he wants to for any reason. He is not obligated to keep Vice President Kamala Harris on at any time. She does serve at the pleasure of the president.
And if the president has her out doing things as important as meeting Zelensky and talking about topic du jour like, abortion, which is obviously one of the biggest political issues of the last 50 years, that's proof positive that the administration not only thinks she's competent and capable of doing it, but that they like how she's shaping that message. And I think Michael hit the nail on the head in talking about knowing your fear. I mean, let's just get down to brass tacks. This is a black woman, a particularly smart, energetic, and effective black woman at communicating, and a black woman who communicates like a prosecutor. If you see a prosecutor in court, most of the people who act as prosecutors are barnstormers. They're going to argue vehemently, they're going to argue passionately, and they are used to encapsulating their points in a way that they want to be persuasive to a jury or here to the American public. So the fact that the administration has given her wings to fly with a lot of its most important policy issues shows that they know that she's adept at doing that. And I think it's a really good point to mention that she doesn't even have constitutional sphere of influence that's specifically given to her. So for the administration to be giving that to her, that is a testament to their confidence in her abilities to communicate their message.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and speak on this, Mignon, as well. And that is, you got some black folks out here. I see these nutcases, these simpletons in the chat room. As a matter of fact, when I posted the article, the Jennifer Rubin article on my Instagram page, you're going to see some of the comments. She gets attacked because her husband's white. Then you got the people who say, well, she ain't really black because her mama Indian, her daddy Jamaican. Again, which is stupid because that's simply a function of where Negroes were dropped off during the slave trade. Okay, so whether you were dropped off in Brazil or Cuba or Haiti or any other part. So let's just be real clear about that. And so you do have that's what is happening around the periphery. But really what we have to understand is she came into the White House and the narrative was already established, grossly underqualified, can't do the job, and the attacks have continued. And I dare say this, if Kamala Harris, take out Vice President, if Kamala Harris was not a threat, she wouldn't be getting so many attacks.
Right. Exactly. She wouldn't be getting so many attacks. And, the thing about Kamala Harris is that, the article referred to her as an underrated asset. I think she's his best, secret weapon, quite frankly. And yes, we're going to have some of us out there that are going to try to bring her down because they have issues with her, or they have issues with who she married or who she loves, or she can't represent me for those reasons, but those are the same people that would say, oh, well, is Barack Obama really black enough? Right. And so, you got to let those things go. Does she have a broad enough appeal to be able to carry this ticket? Because honestly, in some respects, I hate to say this out loud, but I always think about when I see President Biden, I always think about Weekend at Bernie's. And I'm thinking to myself, when you were showing these clips of her out there, meeting with Zelensky and meeting with world leaders and on the stage and representing our country, I kept thinking, oh, please stop showing so much because you're showing how competent she really is. Right. And so we're almost making her a greater threat when you show how adept she is at navigating this international stage. She's representing.
I know. But no. By showing that, we're showing exactly why the vice president is there. Let's be clear. We have, for all these people who are running around talking about, well, I don't know if Biden's going to make it through a second term. Reagan was shot.
Right.
There were 2 or 3 attempts at President Gerald Ford. Kennedy was assassinated. Mm-hmm. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt died in office.
Right.
We could go back. So this idea that, oh my goodness, that's why we have a constitutional hierarchy. That's why it exists. And the other thing is this here. And because on that particular issue there, I would want to show that we have a vice president who is strong, who is competent, who is meeting with world leaders, because that should reinforce, hey, if anything happens, we're good. We have this. But what you have, though, are people who also on this point, on this point here, when people talk about, well, Biden, oh my goodness, I want vibrancy, I want energy. You know what? I want somebody who gets shit done. See that? Right. I mean, again, I'm real clear. Okay? I'm real clear. It's a whole bunch of 45, 48, 50, 55 people. We like, ooh, yeah, man, they get me excited. They got energy. Can they get shit done? Can they get bills passed? No.
Right.
So if you told me I got an 82-year-old dude and a black vice president and they getting shit done, I'm like, yo, keep going. So the problem is, I think what we have is we have too many people who are in love with the pageantry of the presidency. And, oh, I want to see them jogging. I want to see them. Well, hell, look, Biden rides his bike longer than most folk watching. So let's just be real here when we start talking about what people want. We want a lot of people, they want to see the pageantry and all that other stuff. That stuff don't mean nothing if you can't get no bills passed and you can't lower taxes, if you can't sit here and help folk out when it comes to resources. None of that stuff mean anything.
That's a fair point and fair argument. And I do think that obviously this administration gets a lot done. I also do, I believe that there's one thing that we have to think about big picture really is how are they going to sort of sell this ticket in this next round? But Biden is getting a lot of, not so much love, let's say, because of his age. I agree with you. He gets shit done, and it's important that he does. And he has a steady record over time, right? It should be a no-brainer compared to the other person who shall not be named that may be running against him. But I still think, I guess it's just me, and maybe it's because I'm a black woman. I feel this necessity to protect Kamala. Not that she needs it, because she doesn't, but just to
That's why she got Secret Service.
Hey.
That's what she got, Secret Service.
You know what? It's a good thing that I want to look after my girl. I'm not going to give up on that one. I mean, but I think she's ready for the job. She's definitely in training, and she's taking the training wheels off, and she'd be ready for the job day one at the end of a second administration. So yeah, I think she's
but again,
right person for the right time.
But the thing here, Mike, they're getting stuff done. That's the whole point.
Absolutely.
And I think their strategy, I think all of this hand-wringing in the White House over, well, what do we do? I mean, he's getting attacked by his age. No, I think what you do is you sit here and go, we did this. We did this. In fact, I got somebody in the chat room, Mike, who goes, well, first, this is when you know you're dealing with some dumb people. When they go, well, really, what had they done?
well, if you do something as simple as Google, how have the policies of the Biden-Harris administration helped the African-American community? The first thing that comes up is a 36-page document that breaks down 14 million jobs, 3.7% unemployment rate, lowest unemployment rate for African-Americans, $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, the CHIPS Act, Science Act. You have lowering diabetes drugs. You have
Michael, I go right here. All these people talking about. Like for instance, Elise Stefanik was talking about, Trump handed Biden the best economy in 50 years. Lying ass fool. So,
Lion.
U.S. has strongest growth among leading economies in 2023. United States plus 2.5. Next is Japan, then Canada. And then when you talk about, okay, what happened here? Expanded child tax credit. They've now canceled almost $140 billion in student loans. Black uninsured rate reaches record low through the Affordable Care Act. Drop the lower third, please. Made the largest permanent benefits increase in SNAP history. Combated housing discrimination and provided $25 billion in rental assistance. And then we talk about, as you said, 14.8 million jobs, wages, manufacturing jobs, applications for small businesses, unemployment below 4% for 2 full years, and inflation fell 2% over the last 6 months. Okay, when somebody goes, oh, I don't know what's been done, you've got to be literally deaf, dumb, and blind.
They are. They are. And there's a lot of people like that. And they listen to the black social media disinformation agents that have an echo chamber of black stupidity. Okay? And a lot of them are repeating Russian talking points. But don't forget, the African-American household wealth increased 60% under the Biden-Harris administration as well. So what happens is two things. One, there has to be better messaging, and they are increasing this as we get further into this campaign. And they were even running, I saw TV ads in late 2023 targeting the African-American community, talking about what they've accomplished. $7 billion for HBCUs, $5.8 billion for HBCUs in 2021. Don't forget the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill. People talk about the Asian hate crime bill, which is not what it was called. It's called the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. You need to go to congress.gov and actually read the bill. Read that bill at congress.gov because you don't know what it is. But they forget the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, which was the first anti-lynching bill in 122 years. Okay? Passed the House, passed the Senate, signed into law by President Joe Biden. A record number of tie-breaking votes by Vice President Kamala Harris, who presides over the Senate. This is why the American Rescue Plan passed out of the Senate, because of her vote. Okay? And then the Inflation Reduction Act. The reason why it passed, because of her vote, the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So these are people who don't read. And lastly, I see these various, Washington Post had one maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, black men are not sure about Biden, things like this. And when I read the article, I can tell these are people who didn't even Google their talking points before they were interviewed by the Washington Post.
Right.
There was one person from Pontiac, Michigan. He said, well, they gave $800 million to Ukraine. You think they could figure out that student loan fiasco? They've forgiven $137 billion for over 3.7 million people. Despite,
well, first of all, they also don't realize this here. They also don't realize this here. 75% of the money allocated to Ukraine actually goes to U.S. military contractors. The money ain't okay.
John.
Let me say that a little bit slower. Let me say it a little slower for the people whose brain don't move as fast. Mm-hmm. Congress is allocating money for munitions, bullets, guns, planes for Ukraine. 75% of the money is going to military contractors. Right. Where are they based? In the United States. For everybody who's watching me right now, I need you to know there is a military contractor in every congressional district in America. There are 435 congressional districts. There's a military contractor in all congressional districts. So when you yell, oh, the money that's going to Ukraine, the money is actually going to military contractors where, if y'all pay attention, people who look like you are actually employed. So that's money that's actually not going out of the country to Ukraine. It's actually going to 50 states in America. Just for the people who don't quite understand public policy, finance, and world affairs. So that's where they are.
Browder, and I've interviewed Browder throughout the years. Fantastic book. Okay, Now-Valley Contributions to Civilization. But also Egypt on the Potomac. Okay. from Browder as well. And Egypt on the Potomac deals with how the layout of Washington, D.C. is based upon ancient African principles. Okay. And somebody commented here, awesome class. Thank you for helping us sort through the lies and reclaim our identity. All right. So if you like to, now this is just a preview of the class. The class I teach at our online school. This is just a preview of the class. So I'm going to come back to this here in just a minute, but register for this 10-week online history course. Go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. There's a 10-week online history course called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. I teach the class on Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our next classes are Saturday, March 9th, Saturday, March 16th, March 23rd, and March 30th. Okay. And then we have a few more classes after that. The class is on sale, $80, regularly $130. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch this anytime. So even after the course is over with, you can go back and watch the entire class. Okay. And we instead of 10 sessions, we're going to do at least 11, possibly 12. The course outline, the lesson plans for all 10 classes or 10 plus classes are laid out here. And I'll go through and update it periodically because we add a few additional subjects. But we take you through our history. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So we deal with archaeological discovery that have come out in the last 10, 20. So we deal with Egypt on the Potomac and how the layout of Washington, D.C. is based upon ancient African principles coming out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt, meaning land of the blacks. We look at the African origins of Star Wars and the Assyrian drama. There's an excerpt of an interview that I did with Professor Kaba Kamene, where we look at this information. We look at the Hannibal Barca and the Punic Wars, okay, and especially the Battle of Cannae, 216 BC. We look at Hannibal crossing the Alps, crossing the Pyrenees, 219 BC, but the Battle of Cannae, 216 BC. The Battle of Zama, 202 BC, where Hannibal Barca is defeated by Publius Cornelius Scipio. And Publius Cornelius Scipio takes the surname Africanus after he defeats Hannibal Barca at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. Africa is not named after a Roman general. The Roman general took the surname Africanus after he defeated Hannibal Barca. And we know that Africanus is Latin, meaning belonging to Africa. It's Latin, meaning belonging to Africa. We look at the 800-year occupation of the Europes of the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe. And this is going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Okay. And we see the rise of Spanish conquest. We look at Christopher Columbus, and Columbus is essential to the expansion of the transatlantic slave trade and the exploitation of indigenous people and the exploitation of African people also. Okay. So we go through and look at this history chronologically. We also look at the fake Willie Lynch letter, 1712. Willie Lynch never historically existed. I wish we would just throw the Willie Lynch letter in the garbage can where it belongs. It's ahistorical. There are words in the Willie Lynch letter that didn't even exist in the early 1700s. Okay, the sentence structure, the syntax is not what they is not coming from England. That's 20th century sentence structure, and their words from the 20th century, from the industrial and the automotive industry, things like that are in that letter. That was written about 1970 by Dr. Kwabena Ashanti, who's come out and admitted he wrote the Willie Lynch letter, and is Professor Manu Ampim, who I'll be interviewing later this month, who exposed Dr. Kwabena Ashanti as the author of the Willie Lynch letter. It's a fraud. Dr. Kwabena Ashanti meant well, but I think it's done more harm than good. Okay, so you can register for that course at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, let's continue here. And I posted the information here in the thread of the broadcast as well. You can also email us through the website if you have any questions. Right here where it says contact the African History Network, you can email us through the website right there. You can email us also, okay? And if you want to support us through PayPal or Cash App, let's see, we have a preview of the class here, and we have information for the African History Network show, Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We broadcast on my social media platforms. And we have our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Castbox, FM Player, TuneIn. It's about 9 different audio podcast platforms, okay? And you can support us also through PayPal and Cash App right here. $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN app. Click on the link here, takes you to our Cash App QR code. And I had to create this graphic because some people set up fake African History Network Cash App accounts. So these other ones out here are fake ones. Our tag is $ the AHN show, SHOW, and it may show my picture when you go to it also. But we have, click here on the link. We have the actual QR code, and this is our, you can support us through PayPal also, paypal.me/